Thank you so very much. This is a happy and proud occasion as we celebrate the third annual Churchill Club Awards, which have come to be known as the Churchills. And I know we will be very inspired tonight by the four amazing honorees whose contributions have changed the world. I want to especially thank our member and partner Shell, the innovation champion sponsor for this program. We know from working with Shell how deeply the people there care about the themes of the award: leadership, collaboration, innovation, and social good. And we really appreciate their collaboration with us. Please join me in thanking Shell. Our innovation leader sponsor is Bloomberg Business Week. They are in a class by themselves, and I must confess to being addicted to their publication. Three presenting sponsors, also outstanding companies with an enduring commitment to excellence and the values represented by our awards, are Accenture, Nair & Co., and Inside View. Thank you so much as well. And our supporting sponsor is Silicon Valley Bank, and some of you might know that Churchill Club was actually born at Silicon Valley Bank in 1985, so thank you, SVB. I also simply must acknowledge the magical Churchill Club team. Marcia, can't believe how awesome our team is. Danae, Matthew, Kathy, Mindy, Patty, you are beyond amazing. And now, Geoffrey, you get to make fun of me tonight for crying again as I introduce my team. And finally, this event would not be possible without our Academy, a group of nearly 700 leaders from what we think of as the innovation community mosaic, who nominated and then voted on the worthy recipients of tonight's award. Truly did take a village, so thank you to our Academy. And it's always a big honor to have Geoffrey Moore with us as our Master of Ceremonies. Geoffrey is a legend in the industry, and there is no one more recognized worldwide for his unique ability to understand and capitalize on disruptive technologies. And he's certainly one of the Churchill Club's heroes, and one of my personal heroes as well. Please give your warmest Churchill Club welcome to Geoffrey Moore.
Thanks. There goes a heart with two arms, two legs, and a head. So, as you know, the Churchill Club's all about igniting conversations. And that's why it took Winston Churchill kind of as its inspiration, it's kind of its icon. Churchill was a man who ignited conversations whenever he was in the room, and frequently when he was not in the room. Now, last year we had the honor of his grandson, James Randolph Churchill, addressed us, and that was terrific. And the feedback we got was, he was really good. But, there's just something about not being the original, And so we said, well, at that point we pointed out, well, the original is dead. Died in 1965. But your feedback was, well, so was the electric car. So think outside the box. Come on, that's what you guys are talking about. So we said, okay, what are we going to do? So we called Ray Kurzweil, hoping there was some sort of singularity that we might be able to leverage. No, Ray didn't have any. We called Ron Millett over at the University of Connecticut on time travel. It's not quite, it's still an alpha. So at the end of the day, what we did? We just Googled him. We Googled him, and you know what? We found out he's available. And so tonight it is absolutely my pleasure to bring to the stage and introduce to you the man who really does need no introduction, Sir Winston Churchill. I'm going to put you down here. What a pleasure.
Good evening, Geoffrey.
Good evening. Have a seat here.
Why, thank you.
So, please. I guess just to kick this off, our valley is very interested in health and wellness and lifestyle. For a man who died in 1965, you look really good.
You don't look bad yourself, Geoffrey.
Well, thank you. I've died more recently than that, but
Hopefully not on stage,
Well, that
Geoffrey.
was what I was thinking of. So anyway, but any advice about lifestyle and kind
Certainly,
of
certainly. I told my doctor that I never exercise. That the only exercise that I get, Geoffrey, is carrying the coffins of those friends of mine who do run and exercise. However, I want you to know my daily regimen was definitely observed today before coming before all of you here this evening. I rise every morning with a glass of champagne, Paul Roger 1928. I drank that entire year in my life, Geoffrey, and my only regret was 46 was an excellent year as well. I was not able to complete 1946. And a cigar is handed to me by my valet. Lit, 47-inch Churchill length, the newspapers of the day spread out on my bed, my secretary firmly ensconced. In a room just adjacent, you see, I sleep in the nude, Geoffrey. Well,
It might have been more information.
it must be too much information for some of the audience.
Yes.
But I take a good breakfast. I take 3 baths per day, and I drink Johnny Walker Black all afternoon, and water, a good amount of water, because you see, it was a tradition. When I was in India, we had the water tasted. I'm sorry for our Indian friends. The water was unpalatable, and we had to mix whiskey with it to make it palatable. By some amazing turn of events, I learned to like it, Geoffrey.
So I'm going to move on. I'm going to
Yes,
move
sir.
on, and no, I want to actually turn this to a slightly more serious side. So, you know, this valley, we tend to get caught up in our own world, and we tend to lose perspective, and we don't have much of a historical perspective, either as a nation or, frankly, as a valley. So your perspective spans over a century of world affairs. As you look at our time and what we're doing here in the perspective of the various other times you've seen, does it remind you anything? Could you give us any insight into how we might look at ourselves in light of other times and other eras?
Indeed. My time was a very slow time to begin with, the 19th century. I was a man who had a foot in both centuries. When I was born, the electric light bulb was not invented. The automobile was not invented. It was a time when the sun never set on the British Empire, and the world was much smaller. It was controlled by a very small group of people. Today, the world is look at this room here today. The world is controlled by information. We had the same situation. Information moved slowly, but it moved. During World War II, which I am well known for,
You've written about it too, I believe.
I have a word or two.
Yes.
They say that I wrote 10 million words in my life, Geoffrey.
Yeah.
My deepest critics would say that my speeches in Parliament were more than 10 million words. But we get lost in the babble. What I tried to do during World War II was cut through the red tape, cut through all of the inconsistencies, the duplicities, the duplications. I fear that today you are still attempting to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Many people working on the same thing. My vision after World War II was a vision of peace, to bring humanity together. I coined the term summit and brought eventually General Dwight Eisenhower and Nikita Khrushchev together to the table. It was one of the great seminal moments in my life. It was after my second term as Prime Minister.
Yes. Yes.
What I believe today, if you can find statesmen who can bring people together, I always said it is better to jaw than it is to war.
That's excellent. Well,
And you can do it. You here in this room, you can do it.
Please. I'm going to go back to the early part of World War II when it was pretty grim. I mean, basically everything had fallen except England. And we talked about darkest hours. Again, for those of us in the room, in a tiny little world, we have dark hours where we're entrepreneurs trying to take our company forward, and we experience our darkest hours. I just would love to get a sense of how you see those darkest hours. You know, maybe I'm looking at this clock over here, it's clicking at me, but I would really love to hear you.
It was indeed grim. I'll try to do it in just a few seconds, Geoffrey.
Take your time.
I'll do the best I can. It was indeed a grim time. What the people of my country needed was a voice. They needed a voice that reassured them that it was going to be all right, but it was a voice also that told them the truth. That told it like it was. The British people are able to take it as long as you tell it to them, as you say these days, straight. That's what I attempted to do. And according to your President Kennedy, I mobilized the English language and sent it into battle when he bestowed upon me the honorary citizenship in 1963. So we mobilized the English language. We took ordinary citizens on the East End and all the way up to the House of Lords and communicated with them and got the message across that we could beat Nazism and the evil tyranny that was about to befall us. And we did it.
And you did it. Well, listen, thank you very much on behalf of all of us for that. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks a lot. That's very good. Thank you. Thank you so much. For those of you who are CEOs in the room, that phrase about they needed a voice and they needed the truth. Those two things. I think we don't forget the voice, because you as the CEO are the voice of your company, particularly in its darkest hour. So, you know, as we turn to these awards, I just want to remind you for a second about what these are all about. You know, we talk about the four things. We talk about innovation, we talk about leadership, we talk about collaboration, we talk about social benefit, and we honor these things separately, but really they're part of one thing. They're part of one aspirational idea, which is, you know, to do good by doing well and to do well by doing good. And to unite those two things together and bring it forward. And the awards are to remind us of our very best selves, even though sometimes we don't live up to that image of our very best self. They're to call us out for that. And we're gonna see some people today who I think will remind us of our very best selves and remind us of our opportunity to do that, to be our very best selves. And so with that, I'd like to turn to our first award. It's called the Game Changer Award. It's for indispensable technology and business innovation. And I love each one of these awards has a little tagline. The tagline for this award is, "You've changed how things are done, and there is no going back." One of the honors of living in this valley is that phrase has actually been true of a number of things in our life here, and it's very special. So let me invite David Sovey of Accenture to the stage to present this award, along with Steve Jurvetson, who's going to ignite a brief conversation with the award winner. David?
Thank you, Geoffrey. And on the behalf of Accenture, I'm Dave Sovey, Managing Director in our high-tech Silicon Valley practice. Accenture and the Churchill Club have had a fantastic relationship for many, many years, and we both share a passion for innovation. Each day, there's 260,000 people at Accenture that wake up and on the behalf of our clients work with a passion to help drive innovation, whether that's technology innovation, process innovation, or business model innovation. So this award really very much resonates with us. The Game Changer Award, as Geoffrey said, is about indispensable technology. In Silicon Valley, this room has a long history of driving indispensable technology, whether it was the first integrated circuit in semiconductor, the personal computer, the internet search engine, or the smartphone. And now we can add to that list the electric car, and in particular, a really cool, really sexy electric car that actually makes money. So without further ado, I'd like to present the winner of the 2013 Game Changer Award to Tesla Motors. And I'll welcome Diarmaid O'Connell, who will be accepting the award for Tesla.
Thank you. And we need some pictures.
Oh, I don't get the block too?
Who wants to be in front? Oh, okay. We're supposed to come in front. Here we go.
Oh, okay.
All right, it's a photo opportunity. Stephen, get up here. Okay. Here we are.
All right.
I'm so cheesy.
I think it's fine.
You didn't bring your big camera this time.
All right, guys, here we go. All right, all set. Oops.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
Cool.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Stephen.
You want the hot seat?
Sure.
Great. Well, this is exciting.
We barely know each other.
I know. So some context and full disclosure. I just pieced together that we both sort of committed in a way to Tesla in the exact same month, June in 2006, where he joined as the first non-engineer at the company, which is an interesting history. Almost no automotive people and almost entirely engineers. And the first venture round closed in that same month, where we became involved with the company and been involved ever since.
What we're not sure of is whether I came in before or after the round closed. I'm going to have to go back and check.
Yeah, we don't know which came first, but it was in the same month.
Yeah, exactly.
And so he committed to a company that no one had heard of, was not on anyone's radar screen. So maybe to start, before we get to Tesla and the company, tell us your story. How did you connect with Tesla, and what motivated you to seek them out?
So it actually started a couple of years prior. In a burst of enthusiasm, patriotic enthusiasm after 9/11, I went off to Washington looking for an opportunity to work in national security. And I had the great good fortune to have a great boss and a great job. I was Chief of Staff for Political Military Affairs. But there I had a front row seat for what was happening in Iraq and Afghanistan. Started thinking very hard about how we got to where we were. The first job every day was frankly reporting the casualty statistics from the field, our guys getting killed. And as I started thinking about root cause analysis, it all came back to oil. I decided that I wanted to do something about oil intensity in our economy on the other side of my experience in government. Came back to California looking for that opportunity, assumed that if there was anyone doing anything disruptive in the transportation category, it would be here. Was a little bit frustrated for a while because I wasn't finding such a project. But one day picked up a thread about a project where a couple of guys, very bright engineers, were looking to combine two things. One, lithium-ion technology, but as found in a commodity cell. So something that was already the core and most difficult aspect of the vehicle, the energy storage. We were already tapping into an existing industry dynamic, as well that we were packaging it, they were packaging it, they at the time, in a really exciting, compelling product. It was going to be a sports car. And that seemed to me, both of those seemed to be very logical things to do, and an excellent platform to basically, I mean, there's no other way to put it, to thumb our nose at the existing industry and maybe on a good day inspire some new thinking and some change.
That's right. From the very beginning, the company's had what some would call a purpose-driven mission to help catalyze and accelerate the entire industry shift to a future where all vehicles are electric, where the internal combustion engine is history. It's a peculiar positioning. I would think it motivates employees. It certainly gets fans and supporters excited, but from a business perspective, it's an interesting starting point, right?
It is, but you know, for me, at the point I found myself in my career, the idea of mission and attaching myself to a mission, however wild, was really appealing, much more compelling than had I come to it earlier. But what I will say about mission, whether it's mine or anyone else's at the company, is that it was super strong. It was the most passionate thing that any one of us held at that time, and it frankly sustained us through difficult times. I mean, starting a car company is crazy. It truly is. It makes no business sense, given the barriers to entry, given the track record of folks who've tried. And it was the sense of mission, the mission to catalyze a new technology, in this case, electric vehicle technology. And whether you came to it from a starting point of national security or issues with climate change or other factors, or simply the passion to introduce new technology and to do it in an exciting way. It's the thing that we all had in common. It's the thing that kept us going during the darkest hours.
Yeah, maybe that would be a good segue to those dark hours. When you're a game changer, it's not always that easy. There's a reason the game's played the way it is. There's a lot of vested interest in keeping the game played the way it is.
And
right?
that's when things are going well.
They're just trying to kill you.
Yeah, if they're just trying to keep you out, or if they're ignoring you, that's one thing, and it's on you to sort of get their attention and make some progress. But in 2008, the general economy went into a tailspin, largely led by the automotive industry. It was not at all certain whether some of the biggest players in the industry were going to survive that, let alone little old us. And so, you know, there was that crisis, other crises associated with you know, internal things, engineering challenges we encounter. But it's been a challenging road for sure.
That's right. That's right. It's actually interesting when you think about it today. I hadn't planned this. I hope it doesn't go horribly wrong. But here's how many people have seen a Tesla today on your drive? I'm just curious. Take a moment to think. And there's some who wouldn't necessarily know what it looks like, potentially. And so it's
I think they're known as
kind of
Corollas,
bizarre.
so
In the
yeah.
I mean, I once saw 4 red ones at the same time on the road, not parked, but just randomly. It was like, wow. So clearly a lot has changed, right? And hence the award tonight. And by the way, for those who don't know, Herman runs business development as vice president of this, and because of all kinds of things that happen on many different fronts, finds himself on the political front lines, on partnership front lines, just about everything business-wise in the company. So there's a far-ranging set of things we could talk about. But let me start with why the new entrant is the game changer, just in general, with Tesla as an example. And I think if you ask people in Silicon Valley, what are the 2 most innovative automobile companies today, or automotive technology companies today? And by innovative, meaning going to make a difference to the planet, meaning technologies and or companies for which history books are likely to be written. And I happen to know there are books being written about these 2 companies. You know, Tesla and Google come to mind, which is kind of interesting. Both in Silicon Valley, both software-driven entrepreneurs at the helm, not traditional automobile companies. And so there's a Clayton Christensen sense of, you know, hey, always new entrants lead change. That's what always happens. Is there anything special about electric vehicles, in particular, in your mind, that makes it the new entrant that has to catalyze change?
Well, first of all, we have the opportunity, and frankly, we have the necessity, because we either innovate or we die. I mean, we have to move forward. The reason why there's some sort of connectivity between these 2 entities, and why I think that the vector of innovation in this industry is moving in the direction it is, with more and more technology in the car, is that one of the things that we've done fundamentally is take so much of the mechanical element out of automotive transportation. Our cars are efficient, if only for the fact that we took a lot of moving parts, removed a lot of friction, heat loss, and so forth. It's a very efficient platform, but in so doing, we've essentially created a rolling computer. And that opens up all sorts of possibilities. And then when you make that manifest by taking all the switches, dials, and knobs off the dashboard, giving folks a huge touch screen, it opens up their imagination. And then when in parallel developments, you've got companies like Google looking at automotive driving, you know, it simply expands the imagination. You can now imagine networks and connections and utilities and activities that could never have been contemplated 20 years ago. So I think that's why it's happening here, and that's, I think, why you're seeing this synergy, synchronicity, however you put it, between what is, you know, a very traditional sector, automotive, and the most advanced sector in our economy, high tech and technology.
And you also see a lot of the traditional car companies going on the hybrid path, or, you know, patches to a gas burner. It's interesting when you look at the Tesla, and I'll try to toot his horn and his company's horn a little bit here. As if you haven't noticed, it's been a very well reviewed product, right, by the Motor Trends, Consumer Reports of the world, historically so, unlike almost any car in history. Leading folks like Road and Track to say it's the most important car ever released in American history. These are statements you wouldn't expect for a first product release. But then it gets the highest safety rating ever, not just the 5 stars in all categories, but in the subtext and deep analytical dive in, might actually find it's the safest car on the road today, including SUVs. Is this good luck, good engineering, or something special about EVs? I mean, the other fact is there aren't any other pure EVs, meaning they can't be a gas car. They were only meant to be electric from the ground up. Is that the answer, or is it some combination of all three?
I think when your back is to the wall and you have no choice but to go forward because your survival's at stake, when you have passionate and visionary leadership who, and in this case I'm talking about an individual, will brook no compromise, and then you take a very logical, clinical perspective on what you're doing, devoid of emotion, where you say, okay, if I'm going to do the next generation vehicle, what would be the necessary requirements for success? You would quickly fasten upon, one, it's got to have a strong value proposition in terms of the pure economics. Two, it's got to be exciting and attractive. And three, because it's a conveyance that moves at high speeds and carries your beloved children and family members, that it must be safe. And so these become your primary and necessary design requirements. When you marry that to the necessity of surviving and a leadership which will insist that damn the torpedoes, we're gonna hit these marks whether people tell us it's reasonable to do so or not. You've got a formula for success.
Interesting. So you credit if I'm hearing you, a large part of it to the entrepreneurial sort of startup game that may be familiar to software companies, but long lost in enormous multi-billion-dollar multinationals.
Yeah, I mean, look, in the automotive industry is the paragon of an incumbency, which has developed in all sorts of, and in the U.S. in some particularly negative ways, in some regionally defined ways, but every decision, when the magnitude of the enterprise is that large, every small decision is consequential in unusual ways. When it's a highly regulated industry, and when the incumbency has gone, into the public policy arena to sort of wall itself off from innovation, you find the disruptive dynamic, when it actually plays out, is more pronounced because it's been so long since that incumbent industry either had the instinct or the ability to innovate versus what these guys on the outside are doing. And so when that tension snaps, it's the effect, whether real or psychological, is much more pronounced. And I think that's what you're seeing now.
That's an interesting point. We're in an interesting period right now, especially in Silicon Valley, where you might be at that tipping point of sentiment, maybe even within this room, where perhaps a sizable number of folks might believe the premise that electric cars are desirable and might have a bright future. And it was not that long ago when that would have been a distinct minority opinion, and amongst automotive incumbents, an absurdity, right? You can see the sentiment changing, right? Regionally, locally, some OEMs maybe more than others. So there's been some resistance. If I think about what most people have said most often, either potential buyers or like, well, I'm not sure it's for me, it's this thing that they call range anxiety, right? And I've driven an electric vehicle now for 5 years, and I charge nowhere but home because it's a Tesla, and the whole concept is absurd. But everyone thinks they're going to do a road trip across the country, who knows why, and want that freedom. So obviously there's been this brilliant, in my opinion, marketing program of the supercharger, which is a way perhaps to take that issue off the table. I'm curious, in your mind, do you see that initiative as primarily a wonderful way to address the primary resistance to sale, if it is that even in your mind, or do you really see it as, hey, that's an important capability that's going to, really differentiate one vehicle over another?
I would be lying if I said that I wasn't personally surprised at how impactful that capability has been. That having been said, I mean, for the longest time, we've been very aware of a mentality among American car buyers in particular that every car I buy has to be capable of doing everything that I would ever imagine it could do. Walking right past the statistics that say that more than 80% of Americans drive less than 40 miles a day. So really, do you need a long-range electric vehicle? But I think and with the range of whether it was the Roadster, now the Model S, more than satisfying anybody's reasonable daily driving requirements, I think that the supercharger, that last, it's not a last mile solution, but that it's the conclusion on the whole argument and satisfies that psychological concern that everybody has had, that I'm going to be giving up something by adopting the new piece. So whether people ever use a supercharger, I think, is a triviality compared to the effect
Peace
that
of
it's
mind.
having. Yeah.
So one last question before we wrap up, maybe an important one for everyone here. What do you see as the future of electric vehicles? We've made some progress. We have one car. Clearly, no one would expect that this is the end of the story for Tesla or for others. What do you see in the cards, both in the U.S., internationally, product features? What's going to be exciting in the EV space over the next decade or so?
Well, one of the things I think is going to be exciting is that I think we've truly now reached the point where electric vehicle technology has been validated in the marketplace. So we're going to continue to push along at Tesla to introduce more and more economical products, so our Generation 3 vehicle, and we're going to continue to do that. I think that one of the most exciting dynamics is now that some of the most important majors, not just Nissan, but BMW, the work we're doing with Mercedes and Toyota are entering the market, and that's really important to fill. As we're getting there on our own, that they're filling as well. But I frankly think that the other dynamic, which is the most exciting to watch, is what new capabilities are going to be built into these vehicles now that they are much more than can be much more than a simple conveyance. When you marry an exciting technology to get you around with an exciting technology that can connect you to the world, it's almost a continuum in that respect. But I think that that's the development. All the things that you can do when you're in that car that you could never imagine doing before. I think that's the stuff that's exciting to watch.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, and congratulations to Tesla Motors.
Thanks.
Congratulations, Thurman. Hey, thank you, Stephen. Thanks a lot. Okay. Great. Wow. An amazing device. Okay, our next award will be the Legendary Leader Award. This is a recognition of inspirational leadership and contribution to others' innovation and success. The tagline here is, couldn't have done it without you. And it's a wonderful thing to say to another human being. When the Churchill Club asked its Academy to nominate awards for nominees for this award, they asked them to identify people who have seen a brand new future, people who frame the industry and societal needs and envision solutions in a way that is uniquely their own. When you think about this in terms of the person who's being awarded tonight. Great leaders are also great mentors, so it's of equal importance as to recognize and develop talent and catalyze great teams. We asked for a legendary leader who has had enormous impact, both individual leadership and contributions to the people he or she have helped along the way. And so the 2013 legendary leader is Peter Diamandis. He's the chairman and CEO of XPRIZE. He's the co-founder and executive chairman director of Singularity University. Now, this week, Peter has had an unavoidable family emergency. He's with his father. That's a good thing. That's where he should be. He's unable to be with us. But his dear friend of many years, Bob Richards, is here to accept Peter's award and say a few words. And after that, we're going to view a video that Peter sent for us tonight. So, Bob, would you please come up at this time? Come on up. We have this photo opportunity here. I think you should...
It's not the right size.
It's not, well, try it. You could try it on for size.
How's that?
Is that okay?
Yes.
All right, there we go. And the midget that wore it. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank
Bob,
you
why
very
don't you take a few minutes either here or I'll get this out of your way.
Thank you.
Okay.
So everyone, it's a great honor to be here at Churchill, and in particular to accept this award on behalf of my dear friend of 30-something years, 32, I think. I think 2 years old when we met. That's not true. We were actually We were undergraduate students, and when I couldn't have done it without you is a sentiment that I think I feel personally towards Peter. Peter's a master of first causes. He causes a lot of things to happen, not just game-changing ideas, organizations. It was a letter that he wrote in the pages of the editorial letters to the editor of Omni magazine. If some of you remember that, back in the early 80s. And he was a graduate student, no, he was an undergraduate student at MIT at the time, studying microbiology and aerospace engineering. And he was driven to reach out to students like himself who had been impassioned by the accomplishments of Apollo and had been disappointed that the vision of the future that had been promised, that false dawn that happened, that students could change this. And he wrote this letter so passionately that students should unite around the world and really grab a hold of that future that we deserve and we should make happen. And there was another undergraduate student up in Toronto, Canada, it happened to be me, that read that letter that led to a lifelong friendship that changed my life and so many others because of Peter's vision and drive. To understand Peter, you need to understand, and the tapestry of what he's accomplished reaches far and wide. But to understand what really, really drives Peter, you have to understand his passion for space, which is the thing that has brought us together for all these many years. The vision of a future undaunted by the limits of our planetary boundaries, a future that's not just a random walk of history, but is one of abundance and possibility that we can choose to make happen. Imagining a thing to be and setting about to make it so has been the history of Peter's efforts over the last 30 years. We created together two universities, International Space University back in the 80s, more recently the Singularity University, located here in Silicon Valley. Many student groups, many nonprofits, many for-profits that became nonprofits, some nonprofits that became for-profits. And all in all, an amazing roller coaster ride. Peter, I think, has, maybe more than anything else, pointed out the power of incentivization, of incentive prizes, and his creation of the X Prize Foundation, which originally was a prize for the first private space flight into space. 1986, when the X Prize was announced in the Arches of St. Louis, it had been a result of about a year effort after Peter had read The Spirit of St. Louis, written by one Charles Lindbergh. And how many thousands, tens of thousands of people had written that book? Had read that book. But Peter recognized that there was an aspect in that book, encoded in that book, that was absent in our current society. That Charles Lindbergh had endeavored to win a prize. Didn't just wake up one morning and say, I think I'll fly across the Atlantic Ocean from New York to Paris. He was incentivized for a prize. And in the passion to try to understand why the space industry had not experienced the same type of innovation that the aerospace industry had experienced, it was the application of these prize incentives to space that created the X Prize Foundation and led to Spaceship One piercing the blue skies and leading for the first time a private sector company, small team of individuals, making history happen and putting for the first time a private astronaut into space that created a whole revolution. We called it the personal spaceflight revolution. And the many, many prizes since that the X Prize Foundation has inspired. It was more recently that the creation of Singularity University continued that pattern of bringing together amazing people, people that are not unfamiliar to a group like this, and giving them the passion and the reason to believe that the future is one of abundance and possibility, and as eternal optimists, one that we can, each of us, play a role in making happen. Let's listen to Peter tell us a little bit about his own motivations and his own words. If we could please roll that video. Thank you very much for this award on behalf of Peter Diamandis.
Hi everybody, this is Peter Diamandis, and a sincerest thank you to the Churchill Club for this honor. I'm sorry I'm not there in person. My dad has been in and out of the ICU this week, and it's been a difficult week at best. First of all, the notion of a legendary leader is something that I feel very honored about, but difficult to pin on myself. I'm someone fundamentally who's just always pursued my boldest and dearest dreams. And what's driven me is seeing a world the way I think it should be and going out and doing everything I know possible to make it happen. All of this comes from a deep-seated passion and belief that we're living in a day and age where you can make your boldest dreams come true. For me, it started as a child, passionate about Star Trek and Apollo and wanting to go to space, and then giving up on NASA being the mechanism to get me there, and then just in my heart of hearts, believing that I could do something to not only get myself there, but get others there, and then having some small successes, and that addiction to that level of success then drives you to want to do the next bigger and bigger thing. If I think about who my mentors have been, they've been the characters in science fiction novels. They've been the works of Heinlein. They've been the works of Roddenberry. They're the people who see the world as it should or could be, and then paint that picture so vividly that you want to go out there and make it happen. And that's driven me all my life, and I know so many others. And so when I think about the results of the X Prize or Space Adventures or Planetary Resources, the organizations I've been in and part of, Singularity University, it's painting that picture of the future and then just in a serial fashion knocking down boundary after boundary, blockade after blockade, until you hit the fundamental laws of physics, and then making something happen. Because ultimately anything big and bold is hard and difficult and impossible and science fiction until you make it science fact. So, that's who I am in my heart. And I believe that now, today, there is nothing that we cannot do. Whether it's to go and mine the asteroids, extend the human lifespan, wipe out poverty on this planet, there is no challenge. And in fact, the most important thing we need to do is change the conversation from one about complaining about problems to one about solving problems and making your vision happen. I think my dad was a role model for me, is a role model for me. He was born on a small island in Lesbos in Greece, grew up with nothing, literally tending goats and picking olives to keep his family going. And he went from there to the first person off his island to go to medical school, and then ultimately to the United States. And that journey of him starting at such a basic fundamental level and becoming a successful New York physician, for me is the equivalent of me going to Mars and beyond. So I think about that. And I have over the time mentored entrepreneurs, really, people who have a dream, someone who I see as committed to making that dream with the same passion and thirst that I have. And when I see that, I love it. I cater to it. And I'm honored that at Singularity University, for example, every year we have a crop of amazing people that I get a chance to spend time with. And every year I try and bring a couple of those into my life. Over the last 20 years, some of them have become my partners, CEOs of companies I've co-founded, and I'm honored about that. So, I don't know, I'm just someone who is a kid. I feel like I'm a 25-year-old kid going after my dreams. And I think that's the beautiful thing about life right now is that there is no dream too big, and there is no challenge that we cannot overcome. So I thank you all. I wish you an amazing evening, and I look forward to seeing you all in person very soon.
Wow, pretty amazing guy. Elon Musk, Peter Diamandis, barriers to entry that start here and go up and right through. Okay, so our third award. We've innovation, legendary leader. This is magical team. Magical teams, and by the way, magical teams are becoming more and more important in our industry. There was a time when the lone innovator was more of the image. Not so much anymore. This wonderful, and particularly with younger people, this wonderful thing, magical team. You guys nailed it. Pretty cool. So tonight, I'd like to invite Sir Alan Collins of Nairn Company to the stage. to present the award, and I'd also like Seth, you to come on up and to ignite a conversation thereafter with the two award winners. So Seth and Sir Alan, if you'd come up, please. Actually, Sir Alan, why don't you go up? Seth and I will wait down here just for a minute. Good.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Delighted to bring my British accent to the Churchill Club. I feel that's appropriate. And it's good to have another Knight of the Realm in the room in the form of Sir Winston. And we must appreciate what the Churchill Club do. Nair & Co have been a member for a number of years now, and it's a very important organisation here in Silicon Valley, I know. Now, having had Sir Winston, I couldn't resist a word or two about him before I said a few things about Nair and about the people who are winning this honour tonight. We didn't hear from him his most famous phrase, maybe, that Britain and America are two nations divided by a common language. So I will try and keep the Englishisms out of what I say. But he also said, as I think he did tell us earlier today, that he had a great passion for America. He was the first person after Lafayette, and we don't like to count him as British people. He was the first person after him to become an honorary American citizen. And he always said that you can always rely on America to do the right thing after it's exhausted all other possibilities. Now, Sir Winston would probably correct me, but there's apocryphal stories about a very long-running feud he had with, apocryphally, Lady Astor, and a couple of their exchanges have gone sort of down into folklore. There's the one where he and she were together at a dinner, and we were hearing earlier about his fondness for whiskey and so on, and he got very drunk on this, and she stood up and said to him, "Sir, you are drunk." And he got up and said to her, "Madam, you are ugly. But in the morning, I will be sober." And then the other famous occasion was after a similar sort of exchange. She said to him, "Sir, if you were my husband, I'd put poison in your coffee." And he said, "Madam, if you were my wife, I would drink it." Jeff, thank you very much for the introduction. My warmest greetings to all here. I'm Sir Alan Collins. I'm involved with Nair & Co. Any company or organisation, every so often a team or division will transcend expectations and manifest a sublime product or service, and that's what we're talking about here tonight. And it might be the result of years of experimentation, as you so often do here in the Valley, or a disruptive technology sort of idea. But one thing's certain, it will take the world by storm, as we've been hearing about Tesla. And the team that did it have been the ones that have made all the difference. They've had a vision and they've nailed it, as we've heard. Now, Nair & Co. Is a company that helps everybody, but particularly in Silicon Valley, go international. We work in 74 countries. We do a very simple thing. We help people by running their offices for them overseas. We do their HR, their compliance, their tax, their accounts, everything except their core business, allowing them to concentrate on that and grow from the size of a startup to a size, we hope, of an Amazon or a Google, thanks to our help. And this company lives and breathes by the teamwork and collaboration that it has it's part of our very core, it's part of our DNA, we hope. Our passion is to collaborate and enable innovation by helping companies to go global, step by step on the ground, as providing the infrastructure for their business in any country, so that doesn't get in the way of their own unique value to their industry and to the world. We provide a one-stop, holistic, global shop for people, in other words. But even inside Nair & Co., we've been looking at this, inspired by this award, at the internal spirit and process of teamwork. And I think we do feel that even though we're handling issues like HR, tax, finance, and so on, that many people might consider boring, I know the practitioners of them don't, it's nonetheless a very exciting place. And in any case, it's a non-optional extra. Companies have to do this when they're abroad. They can't decide not to. So that's why, given this own internal dynamic in our own company, we're so pleased to be the presenting sponsor for the award of the Churchill Club Magic Team, presented to an amazing team tonight for a collaborative breakthrough that results in an irresistible product or service. And tonight's award, the 2013 Churchill Club Magical Team Award, goes to the Mars Rover Curiosity Team. And I won't pretend that at the moment in the 74 countries that we work in includes Mars, but we are working on that. And if any of you want to set up there, including NASA, we will be very happy to help them. So it gives me huge pleasure to invite Jim Erickson and David Blake to come on stage and accept this award on behalf of NASA and their team. And they'll be interviewed then by Seth Shostak, who'll also come up here. So thank you very much for listening to me, and apologies again about the common language. Congratulations. Congratulations. I think we've got to go around there and present. Well done again.
Thank you. Great. If you guys could be there so I face you. Is that okay?
Okay. I feel like I want to rearrange the furniture, but it's a little too big.
Yeah. Better check with your wife. It's really an honor for me to be up here with these gentlemen because they are, in some sense, my heroes. You know, we live in a century which will probably be, well, this is bound to be a special century. I think every century thought it was a special century. If we're here in the year 1013, you know, we've got jousting, we've got the Black Plague. It's a special century. But this century, we'll see, we're finally understanding biology. We may be inventing our successors, but something that we've already done so early in this century. Imagine this project. This is more than a driverless car. This is more than a robot that can carry you out of a burning building. Taking something the size of a small car, very complicated device, and sending it up to a place that's at least 35 million miles away on a good day. And it's never a good day up there. The weather up there is worse than Antarctica. Interacting with that thing every day. This is something that would have astounded every one of the 10,000 generations of Homo sapiens that have lived before you. And these guys have done it. I'm going to let you introduce yourselves because only you could do justice to that. Jim, why don't you tell
Okay,
us
my
who
name's
you are.
Jim Erickson, and I'm here representing a huge team that is composed of both scientists, engineers, financial accountants, a few others. And they've done a great job, and they've done it as a team, and they get to do it every day and get it right every day. And there's no alternative to getting it right. So this is Dave Blake.
Well, my name's Dave Blake, and I'm the principal investigator of the Kemin instrument on Mars Science Laboratory. And my mea culpa is I'm not an engineer. The good news is I know guys like Jim.
All right, listen, I want to talk a little bit about the teamwork because that's what the award is about. But before we run out of time, I also want to talk a little bit about the science and how it would change, what it would mean to you, the car buyer. You talk about a big team, Jim. How big is the team?
Well, in one sense, you can measure it by, we've got about 150 people working every day. We've got 450 scientists that somehow come together and figure out what they want to do that day. And we had thousands of people building the parts of the product that we put together and put on Mars.
How long have you been at this?
At the space program, I've been at it for 40 years.
No, I mean this.
For MSL, believe it or not, I was involved for about 6 years, strictly on a review board. And then they suddenly said, okay, we've got something new for you to do. I want you to take over the project. And so 2 months after launch, I came over. 2 months after landing, I came over and began integrating into the team.
Maybe I'll direct this to Dave. You know, I think nature has made it easy for small groups to work well together. Small teams like basketball teams or squads in the Army. This applies to men, at least. If you get a lot of men together, they march across the landscape and wreak havoc and destruction. This is a big group of men. And so how did you keep things from fragmenting? I mean, they're all working on parallel projects. How did you keep the whole thing moving?
Well, you know, I'm a scientist, and the issue is if you see something shiny, you want to go look at it, you know. And so I'm probably not the one to ask, but I can describe what the structure, part of the structure that was created to make this happen. And literally, we have to work on Mars's time, right? The rover works during the day and goes to sleep at night. It's too cold to work. We'd have to heat all the joints to even make it move. So we have a time period to do everything. So I hope I can pass this over to Jim because he's one of the guys who designed this. But basically, the data come down, you start work, you have 12 hours for 400 scientists to come up with a plan, put it into some kind of coding, deliver it to a whole bunch of groups that go through and they hash out the energy budget, the data budget, the downlink times, the temperature, where the sun is, and they come up with a series of commands that then are reviewed by JPL engineers ad infinitum, command by command, every night. And if they don't get this thing uplinked to the rover on time, we lose the day. So punctuality is not even the word for it.
Can I follow up a little bit, maybe with you, Jim? But for the audience that doesn't recognize the fact that Mars has a different day length than Earth, but it's close. It's like, what, 20 minutes longer or 40 minutes longer? 40 minutes longer. So you begin work every day 40 minutes later? Aren't you in a permanent state of jet lag?
We did that for the first 90 days, and the answer was yes. You're sitting there, and pretty soon you notice, oh, the sun's coming up, and it's my bedtime. That gets people a little groggy, and we had all kinds of sleep researchers that both helped us get ready for, first on the MER project, Mars Exploration Rovers, and then on this one. But also, then they studied us, because it was a wonderful laboratory for them. We paid them, but somehow when they were studying us, we didn't get paid for this. But I'd like to do one little note. Dave glossed over the fact that these 400 scientists are going to come up with the desire for what the next day is going to be. And they've got only a short period of that 12 hours that rotates through the day and to do that. And can you imagine getting 400 scientists together on what shiny object they want to pick up and look at? I do not know how they do that. They do it very well. And I think it has something to do with Samuel Johnson's saying, if we don't get the commands all together, we lose the whole day, and nobody gets a shiny object. So.
You make it sound easy, and this jet lag kind of intrigues me, that they turned you into lab rats. Did they give you melatonin or something like that? Having done that, I mean, what about the fact that you have this delay? You want the rover to do something. You want it to go over there. You see a shiny object, and you want it to go there. But of course, you send a command, and it takes 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever, to get there. And then it goes over there, and maybe it bumps against something. I mean, you can't just look out the front of this thing with a camera and say, I want to go over there, and then gun the engine and go, right? Can you do that?
Nope. The option really is you figure out what you want the vehicle to do the next day, and you got to make the vehicle smart enough to deal with the things that are going to come up. You say, drive over there. Well, there's a rock in the way. Is it going to go around it? Is it going to stop and wait for help from home? You get to make those decisions, and the question is, do you think that the smarts you put on the vehicle, the software you've designed, the robotics, is it good enough to handle that particular challenge? Or is it scary enough that you say, if it runs into that, stop and we'll figure it out? But if you get there, then we want you to put the instruments on that rock. And when it all comes together and you get the results back and the vehicle did what you want, you get about 30 seconds to say, oh, God, thank you. And then you're on the next day.
I'd like to remind people that going to Mars, I mean, it's not easy, it's not cheap, it's not simple, but it's also almost never successful. At least that was the case up until fairly recently. Okay, so people know about the 7 minutes of terror where this thing is coming down, but I can hardly imagine that there haven't been additional minutes of terror since. Dave, can you tell me about some of the unexpected things that looked like there might have been showstoppers, if there were any.
Well, the whole thing kind of looked like a showstopper when we started, you know, and when I say we, it's not me, it's a lot of JPL engineers. And I think something that people don't realize about this landing is it was done for a reason. And when the Merlanders landed, they have something called the landing ellipse, and that's the area where the thing would land with air added to it. And that ellipse was over 100 kilometers in diameter, 100 kilometers. That's the diameter of the whole of Gale Crater. Now, this landing system that was devised by JPL, these engineers, it landed in an area that was 20 kilometers long by 6 kilometers wide. And I had my project engineer at JPL, because my instrument was built there, he saw the landing, he came up to me afterwards and he said, they missed the mark by 2 kilometers. And people don't realize how amazing that is, aside from what it looks like, the doing of it. And personally, I can say this because I'm not from JPL, I'm from Ames Research Center. There's a national treasure of engineers down there, generations of engineers who make this possible.
Let's talk a little bit about the science. The rover Curiosity is now climbing this mountain really, Mount Sharp. It's doing this not to plant a flag at the top. There's kind of a layer cake of sedimentary rock. What's the interest? Why make it so challenging for this thing?
Well, the thing, I mean, if you think about the 9 years that the MER rovers have been going around, the one now going around the surface, it has seen about 10 meters of sediment looking into craters. Mount Sharp is 5,000 meters of sediment, and this is not the central crater of from the moon, which is just thrown up material from the impact. This is sedimentary rock. This Gale crater was filled with sedimentary material and then excavated by the wind. And so this 5,000 meters of sediment has at least 1 billion years of Mars history tied up into it, layer by layer, and we can read it like a book.
So the idea is to learn the history of Mars, but there's a
Yes.
reason to learn the history of Mars. I mean, it's not just to fill Martian textbooks.
Okay. Well, we're learning about Mars because in doing that, we will learn about the Earth, because the Earth has tectonic plates. If you wanted to look for 3.5 or 4 billion-year-old rocks on Earth, it would comprise 1% of the surface, and it would have been heated to the point where you couldn't even tell what kind of a rock it was. Mars never saw plate tectonics, and so if we want to look at the very early part of Mars history, at the same time when Mars was wet and warm like the Earth was, the same time that life originated on the Earth, we look to Mars, because that's where we're going to find it. We're not going to find it on the Earth. There are no rocks there to look at of that age.
The one word you haven't used, either one of you, is, I don't have to tell you, life, right? Okay, and I'm sort of curious why it is that actually Curiosity doesn't have any experiments on board to look directly for biology, microbial biology, that might still be extant underneath the rusty, dusty surface of our little ruddy buddy up there. And why is that? Why don't you just, because that would be the big win. I think everybody's interested in, I'm sure 90% of this audience is interested in the hydrology of Mars. Okay, I don't doubt that. But what they really want to know about is the biology on Mars. Why don't you just look for life directly?
Well, let me jump in on that one. From personal history, on Viking, back in 1976, that was the plan. Go for the home run. Identify whether life was there now. They had the labeled release experiment, the results from that, and when they looked at it, they realized we can't tell from what we sent it to Mars. We found very active chemistry. It could be the chemistry, it could be the life. We don't actually know how to tell whether there's life there or not. So that sort of made us a little more humble. And now we're trying to do the stepping stones that say, is there a possibility that there's life there as we know it? Throw in that caveat as well. And what would you have to find in order to say the conditions were there in the beginning to have life? Maybe there wasn't, but were the conditions right there first? And then once you find that, you say, okay, these are the areas where there might have been the conditions for life. And a further criteria later is, and would still be preserved over the billion years or so where that might happen. And then the next steps later on are going to be to try and get to the other question with the four-letter word that nobody mentions.
Okay, so, I mean, you guys are interested in life, I don't doubt that. You're saying, Jim, step by step is the way to do it. We tried the home run, it didn't work. The problem with the home run is it requires that you land in the right spot, find it out. Now you can determine where the right spot to look for hints of biology either existing now or maybe 4 billion years ago when Mars was a kinder, gentler planet, to quote one of our presidents. Is that the deal?
That's the deal. And it may be a little more frustrating to wait, but I think this is the path to get it right. We'll know the answer when we're done.
Just a technical thing. How far up that mountain does the Mars Science Laboratory, the rover, how far does it go per day typically?
Oh, per day?
Per day.
Well, I should
Maybe per
preface,
hour.
I should preface this. We landed, and we went, as scientists do, we went the opposite direction, a kilometer from where we're supposed to go, mainly because there were some shiny rocks in that direction. And we found a habitable environment. It was the first time ever, and so there was good reason to do this. We followed our intuition. We followed the orbital imagery, and we went to the sweet spot, and we found what we wanted to find. Now we have to backtrack we have to go 8 kilometers to get to even the entry to Mount Sharp. So we're going to spend the next year trekking along 80 to 100 meters a day, hopefully more if Jim and his friends can beef it up a bit. And
no pressure.
And we're going to do some sampling along the way, but we will be at the base of Mount Sharp probably next year at this time. But the good news is our observational period of the lifetime for our mission is 2 years, but it'll go on if we're still alive. And we had a little meeting with all the PIs, and we discovered that there's nothing on the rover that's going to quit at least before a decade. So we've got at least a decade to move forward. So we'll move on up, and we'll go as far as we can.
All right. Well, we've run out of time. Just a simple observation. In 5,000 years, when people look back on the 21st century, right, it isn't the wars or even the social media or the reality television that they're going to remember. What they're going to remember is what you guys are doing. These are the first steps out of the crib. I think you guys really nailed it.
Thank you.
Jim. Great job, Seth. Wow. So maybe we can have an X prize to get a supercharger up there to help the rover. Okay, one more award tonight, and I think in some ways capturing all the awards together. The final award of the evening is the Global Benefactor Award. And the tagline here is, thanks for thinking big. And it's kind of a special attribute of our valley. And as we were, the Tesla story, thanks for thinking big. Peter, thanks for thinking big. The rover story, thanks for thinking big. So to present that award, I'd like to welcome to the stage Umberto Moletti, the CEO of Inside View. Umberto, come on up.
What great speakers tonight, huh? Just a great lineup. Very exciting to hear all these stories. And I have a little speech, but I've been inspired, so I'm not going to use it. I'm just going to go open loop, and who knows what's going to come out of my mouth. Maybe it'll be entertaining. So we all know Mark Benioff as being really a leader, the leader of a new industry, which we now call cloud computing. I would argue that without him, we would not be where we are today. Now, even Oracle says they do cloud computing. You know that means the industry has really happened. And I personally owe them a debt of gratitude because I started my company, Inside View, in their ecosystem. And without them, again, we wouldn't be where we are today. But we're not here tonight to give him an award for creating a market. Like many leaders, he went beyond just being an industry leader and innovator, and also innovated in the way that companies think about charity, and the companies think about philanthropy. So early on, created the Salesforce.com Foundation, the 1-1-1 model that now many other companies model after. And then more recently, personally donated $100 million to fund the UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital. And so it's great pleasure, and thank you, the Churchill Club, for giving me this opportunity for me to invite up Mark to the stage and give him the Global Benefactor Award.
That's great. There he is.
Thank you very much. Very tiny hat. I'll just stand down here, actually.
My
Oh, okay. I'll get up here. Here we go. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
You can bring your,
Yeah, where would you want me?
right in the middle. Right.
Thanks.
So,
When I do a little thing, my comm guys, they always go, "Don't play with your shoe." Today they're going to say, "Don't play with your hat."
I think bring your hat to the next
Yeah.
meeting. Just and say, look, we had a prior executive, but he didn't work out, and so
I was trying to come up with a lot of hat jokes.
that didn't work so well. So I want to catch up a little bit because you and I spent some time together earlier this year.
Yes.
And I want to give people kind of a sense of kind of the fact you're up to a bunch of stuff. So you were talking about driving organizational change. How's that going?
Before we start, I just want to thank you for that, for helping me, helping my company, helping our valley, helping our industry, being our commentator, our historian, our sage. You have added so much value to everything we do. Thank you very much.
Okay. Global benefactor, right there.
Okay, let the grilling begin.
Well, no, but so how's
Okay.
the organizational change project? How's that? That's
It's exciting. I mean, for a company like Salesforce, we're a company that this year will do more than $4 billion in revenue. We have more than 10,000 employees. We're growing still at more than 30%. And it's just fast growing. And when you have that much change and that much growth, any type of organizational change is complex. I don't think it's as complex as the Mars Project, however. That makes it look like, I just feel
whatever.
like that is really inspiring.
Now it's Keith Block's
That's
problem.
exciting.
Anyway.
It's Keith Block's
You brought in
problem.
a new
Exactly.
guy. But
I love
also
him.
the same year you were doing the moving to the mobile platform. So
Yes.
And how's that going?
Yes, that's great. I mean, our industry is just a beautiful thing. It's a continuum, and it's all these technologies. I mean, you hear automobile, space exploration, it's the nature of the X Prize, all this technology is constantly getting lower cost and easier to use. It's just awesome. It's just riding the continuum that's so complicated, and that's what's hard. And I think what's so inspiring about all the people that you've heard is, that, like you said, they're thinking big, number one, but also in our industry, people are always overestimating what they can do, in a year, and they underestimate what they're going to do in a decade. And I think for the entrepreneurs, the leaders, the visionaries who can kind of get through that block, that they can see the future, truly. So many people in this industry can see the future, that they can create this amazing next world for us. It's just awesome.
Well, here's the point I was kind of trying to get to. So in this last year,
I'm not going to answer your
I know,
question,
exactly.
so
I've given up on you. But driving organizational change.
That happened a decade ago.
A major.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
A major mobile platform. He added a new cloud. We had this marketing cloud thing. It's a huge thing. And he's got to have a few friends to come over in November and to meet you at the Moscone. I think maybe 120,000.
Well, that's been exciting, which is that, you're right. I mean, when we started the company, and think about not thinking big enough, we didn't realize we were going to really start an industry. And for us to do what we want to do and make happen what we want to make happen, we would have to create an industry. And it has happened. It's exciting. You do see this cloud computing industry, and then of course, our company conference, for whatever reason, Dreamforce, has become the industry conference, and so we'll have 120,000 people come, November 18th, 19th, and 20th, all over the world. And you just see this manifestation of creativity and inspiration and excitement and power. I mean, it's really phenomenal.
It's amazing. So here was the point I'm leading to. This man's world is nonstop. It's always been that way ever since I've known him, and long before that. If you're going to be a global benefactor, there's no way you can tack it on to that life and say, you know what, I want to do all this and I want to be a benefactor. It's like, I'll just do that on the side. And so one of the most amazing things, and it's very well documented in Behind the Cloud, but I want to kind of just walk through this story a bit, is to build in an integrated approach from day one. I mean, so kind of just tell us a little bit about how the thinking went into that. How did that first foundation set of things get going? What was going on, and where the 111 thing came from?
Well, I mean, I think it's a good lesson, and I think, you know, I was reflecting, yesterday I turned 49, and so I thought about, you know, I'm kind of entering my third of my life. I'm probably already squarely in it.
You're a baby.
But, you know, the first thirds of our life are very much about learning. The second thirds of our life is very much about creating, and the third of our life is very much, I think, about giving back and teaching and mentoring. But, you know, what I realized yesterday is all three of those things, learning, creating, and giving, are all happening simultaneously, you know, in the present moment. And when we can kind of get into that present moment reality that, wow, all of this is happening, and that you want this integrated approach, it can be extremely fulfilling. It can be enlightening, and honestly, it can be grace. It can be a continual set of grace in your life. And this kind of revelation for me came way more than a decade ago. I was still at Oracle.
Yeah.
It was about 1997, and I was invited to a conference that was being chaired by Colin Powell. And this conference was really awesome, called the President Summit for America's Future. Was the 5 living presidents of the United States at that time. Nancy Reagan at the time represented Ronald Reagan. And Colin Powell's message was very simple. All you folks have come here from corporations, and the assets that you have in your corporations, the money, the talent, the time, the relationships, the technology, well, it needs to be used to help others. And when are you guys going to kind of wake up and realize that we have all these amazing corporations in this country, and we can turn the power of those corporations back into a tremendous amount of grace and service to our communities? And I went back, and at the time I talked to Larry Ellison, who was my manager, and he's like, this is great. They've got America's Promise. We'll create Oracle's Promise. We're going to have $100 million. We're going to put computers in schools and network schools. And I was all into it. So in the mornings, I'm out there in the schools. Afternoons, I'm building software. But in the mornings, we're in schools all over the country. Anyway, Colin Powell asked us to do a school in Washington, D.C., McFarland Middle School. And we have these 2 great engineers, Mitch Wallace and Jim Cavallari. They go out there. They've got 100 computers. They've let the Oracle office know. We have a big office in Bethesda, Maryland, because government's a huge customer of Oracle. And they call and they go, oh, we have a huge problem. It's 110 degrees. We got the computers. It's 3 flights. We're never going to get this done. And all the employees from Oracle, well, they haven't shown up because they don't realize it's important to us. And I recognized that at a very key moment that there was a problem. The problem was that those employees didn't realize that it was important to the company, to our culture, because it wasn't part of our company or culture. It was exactly as you said, it was tacked on. I had to have this very uncomfortable call with Colin Powell. I had to call him. I had to say, oh, General, I'm so sorry. The computers are not going in today. He's yelling at me, hangs up on the phone on me, really, upsetting. Anyway, my phone rings again 30 minutes later, and Jim and Mitch are on the phone, and they're going, well, a battalion of Marines just arrived here at McFarland Middle School. And I'm like, it's good to be the general. So,
but so when you did your own,
got those computers in, fortunately.
But when you, okay, so when you went to do your own computer, your own company, what did you do instead?
Well, I think the message is you got to do it from the beginning. You got to integrate it into your culture. And you know what? Your employees want you to do it. Your customers want you to do it. Your partners want you to do it. And
do your investors want you to do it?
Your investors want you to do it because it creates a better company. It also attracts more talent. And it creates this virtuous cycle inside an organization that you can give back. Like I said, you can learn, you can create, you can give back simultaneously, and you can do that in your company. And we've learned that. We took 1% of our time when we started the company, 1% of our equity, and 1% of our profits. Now, it was very easy at the time because we had no equity, we had no time,
And
we had no profits.
You primed the pump a little bit.
But what happened is the company scaled, and the 501c3 public charity scaled with it.
Yep.
And so today we've given away tens of millions of dollars. We have over 100 employees in the foundation. We have 20,000 nonprofits for free running on our service. We don't charge nonprofits or NGOs for our products, which is great. And I mean, that's, we applaud, but that's an applauding of a decision 14 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's my point, which is it's the grace that actually will continue to come. And it's a feel-good thing. I can't tell you how many panels, how many people, how many random occurrences I have where people say, oh, well, I'm using Salesforce for this amazing, phenomenal thing. And I'm like, this is just, the power of giving back. And I think that we are an industry of creationism and kind of never-ending cycles of improvement. But we don't do a great job of giving and generosity and thinking about compassion into our companies from the beginning, from the get-go, and it's so easy actually to do, as we've proven. And by the way, we've inspired a lot of other great companies to follow along. We mentor those companies, show them how to do it, because it's a great and it's fun. It's a great aspect of a company to be able to give back. And then personally, I'm very, my wife is here tonight, and she's my partner in my philanthropic efforts. And Lynn, would you just stand up and
please
thank you for that?
Yeah.
And
never miss a chance to humiliate your spouse. It's worth a million.
It's a professional speaker right here, ladies and gentlemen. But we've given $100 million to UCSF to build a new children's hospital in San Francisco. But honestly, we're really committed to really giving a vast majority of our wealth away because it's easy to do. It's massively impactful, actually, and there's organizations who desperately need it. And so we can do it personally, we can do it organizationally, and then you get this whole ecosystem of folks around you that show how possible it is to do, and that's the inspiring thing.
Well, I want to just touch on one thing, because one of the things that's characterized the workforce in the last 10 years in particular is there's a much stronger sense, I think, of altruism in the workforce than the decade that prior to that, where there was, I think, much more oriented toward just wealth accumulation. So this structural thing that you've done, you've been at
Well,
this
I don't
now.
think you should go on from that, because, we have inspiring figures today in society like Bill Gates. And you know what Bill Gates has done in the last 10 years, it's pretty awesome. I was just with Bill Gates at a conference, and I had an opportunity to talk to him, and smiling ear to ear, far happier when he was working at Microsoft. He used to be this grumpy guy.
He did.
Windows everywhere. But then now, now it's like joy and happiness and elation.
Yeah,
and
it is.
It's really awesome. And it's true, actually.
true.
It's
Absolutely.
completely awesome.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I'm just looking at him going, this is a model, actually. Here's a guy who worked the appropriate level of his life, and now he is just saved 10 million lives by dedicating the last decade of his life to philanthropic good. And that inspires me. That should inspire all of us, and we should be looking for these models. And he's not the only one who's doing this kind of tremendous work. So we have to, we can have that joy, and happiness. Why should he be the only one who's happy?
That's right.
We can all have that happiness. And he shows us how to do it by dedicating our life to, giving back.
So you're, in fact, part of when you joined Salesforce. There's so many lessons you guys have learned from this in the 14 years. But just if you were to pick, like for example, when people join the company, how do you get them in part of this thing? How do you invite them into this to this grace?
Well, I think that you have to start right at the beginning. And honestly, on the first day of work, and I didn't come up with this, but Suzanne DiBianco runs our foundation. It's phenomenal now for more than a decade. You've had a chance to meet her. Day one, she's at CGI right now, which has been a great partner of ours. Day one, people come in for the first 3 hours. Here's the bathroom. Here's your email address. Here's your cube. And the second half of the day, by the way, here's Grace Cathedral. Here's Family House. Here's a nonprofit, and you're going to go spend the rest of the day doing selfless service. So get out there and do something for someone else, and stop looking at your navel for the rest of the afternoon. because it's got to start right now, and that's the message the first day of employment. Now, we've cycled tens of thousands of people through the company, by a normal rate of churn for a company our size. So we've been able to kind of give that opportunity to a lot of folks. And again, it's not that hard to do, and it's not anything that I think that anybody should really get a pat on the back for. It's just that when I went to business school at USC, which is a very good business school, and I'm a trustee at USC, I'm a big fan of the school, but there's none of this, in place. You go to marketing class, you read your book, you do accounting, you do, these organizational behavior things, most of which you don't use any of it, but
It's true.
That is not part of the curriculum, and it should be, because it makes for a better company. And I think that this was, look, when we started our company, we wanted a new technology model, when that's cloud, multi-tenancy, subscription services. That business model also, I would say, is also a critical part of what we did. Charging as you go instead of the license fee model. But then a new philanthropic model. I think a new philanthropic model was very much one of our goals, and it's exciting to see it pay out. That it's turned into be something that we could really get some truth out of and get that light out to everybody.
Well, the world is a better place, and thank you very much.
Thanks,
on
and
behalf
thanks
of
for the
everyone.
hat. I really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, buddy. Take care.
So I just want to make a couple of kind of closing comments. All this thing coming together, again, the innovation, collaboration, social benefit, magical teams, the whole thing. A phrase that came to my mind was strategic acts of generosity. This amazing energy that the human spirit has that we tend to put into boxes, and we tend to try to scale it. And the thing that we heard tonight is, if you want to scale it, take it out of the box, right? Just let it scale itself, because it wants organically to scale. I've been spending a lot of time the last year with very young teams in the next generation of technology, and there's just a spirit there that is, it's like Peter's spirit. Peter, his book is called Abundance. It's coming from abundance. It's there for us to do. And if the inspirations that we heard tonight, they're there for us to aspire to. The world clearly needs us. If you don't have to go to Africa, you don't have to go to Asia, you don't have to go to Syria. There's help wanted signs everywhere in the world. So help is wanted, and we are magically endowed with the capability to do that help. I think the thing I'm taking away from tonight is a phrase that what my friend Joe Schoendorf likes to use. He says, life is not a dress rehearsal. This is it. This is the game. So it's like, if you're going to do it, as an entrepreneur would say, maybe I'll close with this, do it now, because this is the time. So thank you very much on behalf of the Churchill Club for the award.